then as we do it, we're going to reset to a new higher, level for gold or Bitcoin, and they are going to become the reserve currency. The inflation would stop. It would stop. And so I think people would be willing to live with knowing that there's a better time ahead. They might be willing to live with a tough transition. That's kind of how I see it. But don't get me wrong, I may have it wrong. And when I say it's going to be tough, it could be orders of magnitude tougher than I think. But frankly, continuing along in the system we have, that's pretty tough too. I mean, I think the country is hurting right now because of the COVID inflation. Wait till the next one comes. I mean, I entitled the book "The Big Print" because I think we've got another one coming because of the Stein's Law and a lot of other things I can explain in a minute. But to be complete disclosure, we've had two big prints. We had one in '08, with the QE that they did there and the 0% interest rates they did there, and we had another one in 2020. And the second one was bigger and faster. And so I think the next one's going to be bigger and faster still. And what's that going to do? That's going to mean even more pain becomes worse in the next several years, Ben. People are going to, the voters are going to wake up and say, God damn, this is horrible. I can't stand it anymore. Please tell me what we got to do to fix it. And then some politicians
voting blue, red over and over does not seem to fix it, does it?
They had a presidential debate last fall. They didn't even talk about it, right? But what happens when instead of blue, red, there's suddenly somebody's orange, and that guy raises his hand and said, hey, you know what? The problem is the money's really broken. Here's how we fix it. We go to a Bitcoin standard, and if enough people own Bitcoin, if enough people have read my book, if enough people have come to accept that the monetary system is the problem, that person's going to win in a landslide. And we're going to go in that direction. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that's going to happen immediately, but I think eventually that's where we're going. That humankind will figure out that this other system just doesn't work. It reached its natural expiry date or the end point of fiat currency.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I'm definitely not holding out hope we're going to have a true Bitcoin president that actually understands the problem and is willing to promote these sound money ideals that we talk about.
That things are going to get better. And, again, that's really, the purpose behind the book. I'll just, lift it up here and show people. It's on Amazon. It's called The Big Print. And, it really, I tried to write it. I don't know, who's read it and whatnot, but I tried to write it at a level that, you don't need to know what monetary economics are. You don't need to be into this stuff. You just need to kind of read it and hear the story. And I think what you'll realize is that, oh, yeah, this really is wrong. And they've it's not American. It's not fair what they're doing and they've done. And, there are a lot more of us than there are people in the banks and the Federal Reserve. And, we have a vote on what happens here. So, they've done it in a sophisticated way. And they put it in great language that make them sound like they're working on behalf of the American people. I mean, Jay Powell repeats that all the time. I'm doing what's the best, but they're not. and the book provides compelling evidence of how they are not. And so once you see that, you can't unsee it. And then I think what you do is you get mad and or you start thinking, okay, well, given that's the case, step that got created a long time ago. But even in the old days before gold emerged as money, they did have ledgers, Sumerian ledgers, where they did keep track of goats and wheat, and they had goat wheat prices. They figured out how to exchange. But really, money is the universal item. Karl Menger, the founder of the Austrian school, said it's the most liquid good that we all universally accept as having value, and that's an important thing. It's actually perception, not intrinsic nature, that creates value. Although the intrinsic nature leads to the perception, at the end of the day, it's the perception. So money really becomes, that medium of exchange that people use to pay for goods and services. Now, it also should be able to store money through time because, or value through time because, when you're young, you might be able to work very hard and make a lot of money, and then as you grow older, you don't have as much money, and you need to figure out how to, you want to live off your savings. So it's important that money store value over time. And of course, that's where the dollar has really, really fallen apart, because the book lays this out, is just continual abuse. and sadly, the further part of the history is when you see that when countries and societies go through this, very often, eventually, it leads to just a complete collapse. I mean, the average age of the average fiat currency is like 40 or 50 years. And, we've kind of now been on fiat currency standard, coming off the gold standard 71, it's about 54 years. And so, that's an interesting data point to me that, we're kind of reaching that average point. Now, could it go on a bit longer? Sure, it could. But, I think what we've seen, we've seen the behavior of the central banks that would now indicate to me that we are in the end game, and what is money is going to be redefined. And that's the question to be answered in this fourth turning. And I think when this fourth turning is over, money will be gold, silver, and Bitcoin. And the dollar will probably exist as a medium of exchange, but it won't be anything to store value in. So,
yeah. And gold will always hold a special place in my heart, because I've told this story many times, how I finally got out of the crypto hole, which
butts, all the major criticisms. And I held some of those myself. It's interesting. Michael Saylor was tweeting in 2013 and he thought Bitcoin was bullshit, but he changed his view on it, because as he studied it, he realized he was wrong, and so, anybody who has a negative view of it, who hasn't studied it, all I would say is just, fine, hold on to your negative view, but study it a bit and see if you still come to the same conclusion. And I've watched a lot of people go from hating it to being, raging Bitcoin bulls. So, but that process it takes time. It doesn't happen in a day. It takes time, it takes knowledge, it takes seeing things play out, etc.
And it takes a lot of mental fortitude and resilience, because every single one of us has been through our first Bitcoin touch point where we heard about it and we said, oh, that's a scam. Right. Or, I'll get a crypto coin instead. It'll be the next Bitcoin.
Right.
No one hears Bitcoin the first time and buys it. That's not what happens.
Some do it, yeah, but you're right. Which would be 10x. And it would still only be 2% of all the assets. Cash is like 18% of all the assets. So now, am I saying we're going to take over all the assets? I don't know. We've got to see how this all shakes out. But my point is, for those who think they're too late, they're very much wrong, in my view, just because of the total available market that we can try and capture, and the fact that we're still very early days in terms of adoption. The other thing I like to use the, I can't pay this, you got it cheaper thing. I try and make the metaphor of, let's examine the fiat money system and say it's failing. And so, it kind of looks like the Titanic, and we know the Titanic, that one end tipped up and then eventually it sank and it was dead. And the fiat money system has some characteristics like that. I'm not sure that's what's going to happen. We might save it before it sinks, but it has characteristics like that. Okay, so lifeboats, if you're on the Titanic, you got a seat on the lifeboat. Well, that's good. You're not going to go down with a ship. And in the olden days, you could buy a gold life, fluctuated wildly in terms of other things. And I know there wasn't a lot of gold, and that was one of the problems. And that's why actually silver became money, because there's more silver in the world than there is gold. And so it was easier to do transactions in silver. But, I think any form of monetary system that's being adopted is going to be volatile. And there were periods in the adoption of gold where there was a lot of inflation, because, as an example, when they raided the Incan temples in, the 1600s, the Spanish brought back tons of silver and gold. And so suddenly you had an enormous growth of the money supply. And so that inflated everything in terms of prices. Gold right now grows at about 1.7% a year. That's the amount outstanding, or the production compared to amount outstanding. When the gold rush happened in 1849 in California, they found a ton of gold, and they very quickly...
During the hyperinflation.
Yeah, Dan Oliver did that chart. It's a fabulous chart, and it shows how monetary events are volatile. They really are. Look, money is at the core level of all human activity, and if the money is going up and the money is going down in value, it creates a lot of chaos. So it's a problem. Nope. There you go. Yeah, that's it. So we should tell the people. So this is the black line on the right scale, and it's a log scale, is the number, the gold price in Weimar marks. And what you can see is that the Weimar mark effectively became worthless. It got to the point where, they were using it to burn furnaces. It took billions of Weimar marks to create, 1 gram of gold. That was the end point. And it started in the beginning where, it took 1 Weimar mark for a gram of gold. That might be what we have to look forward to if they don't get smart here and do a reset. which I hope
Yeah.
because that would be a very painful event, but it might be where we go. I mean, sadly, politicians don't really think forward. They tend to just respond to crises. And so sadly, we may end up with some kind of a crisis here before they figure out that sound money is the right solution.
Yeah, they're not incentivized to think long term because they only care about their 4-year term, maybe getting reelected. So just promising more free stuff to people, which we know just encourages more of these degenerate practices that causes more problems. So
exactly.
This is why voting for Bitcoin is the best vote you can do.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So I know we're coming up a few minutes left here to your hard stop. So why don't we finish things off here with just a little bit of hyper Bitcoinization predictions from you, Larry? I know that we're talking a lot about how,
inflation, the thing that started to happen in Weimar. And then I think, either that'll go to its natural conclusion, which is the dollar becomes worthless, or I think more likely, and part of the reason I wrote the book was, people will realize what's happening. They'll realize it's the money printer. They'll realize it's the Fed. And, some politician will stand up in that cycle and say, this is the problem, folks. We need to fix it. And they will win overwhelmingly. And we will do a currency reset, where we're now on the Bitcoin standard. I mean, that's kind of the best hoped for solution. And that's kind of how I see it unfolding. And so what does that mean if Trump's term runs to 2028? So, that means kind of sometime before 2032, fiat has failed, and we've got, we're on a hard money standard again. I mean, that's
moral of the episode: don't have zero Bitcoin, please.
Correct. Yeah, that's a no-brainer. And I think anybody who buys Bitcoin now will be, in 10 years' time and 20 years' time, they will be extremely glad they did. I have a pretty high level of confidence in that. So.
And getting higher every day for me. Every 10 minutes we get a new block, I'm even more confident. So yeah, Larry, I will include the links to all the things we talked about here: your book, your Nostr, your Twitter, which hopefully Elon will let you out of Twitter jail soon. Is there anything else that you'd like to throw out here for people to follow you on?
That's really it. I mean, thank you so much for giving me the platform. And all I would say is, if people, obviously I make a little money buying the book or selling the book, but not much. What I would really say, I'm trying to spread a message.
Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and enabling post notifications for more content on crypto and digital assets. Check out our other videos and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps with the YouTube algorithm and keeps the content coming. Thanks for your support. Enjoy the video.